So now that I explained a little bit of the conduct of how this is going to go, one more time, I'm going to say that welcome to College Leap. We are a national nonprofit organization that aims to empower community college students, especially international students across the country. We establish chapters at different college campuses to provide leadership, internship opportunities there. Also, we will be launching in 6 national events throughout the year, and the NBPC is just the first one. And our virtual transfer fair will be coming up in October, so stay tuned for that. And if you guys have any questions about NBPC that you would like to be spoken about directly, Jay and I will be staying in the chat afterwards to answer any of those burning questions for you. Oh, and other than participating in the NBC, there's other events that are going on, and we encourage you and implore you to take a chance to try to be a chapter leader at College Leap chapters at your college. And if there's not a College Leap at your college, then maybe that's starting that coin could be your big ticket. All chapter leaders will be considered interns of the nonprofit, and an onboarding and training session will be provided. And we'll all sync up in meetings with College Leap every single week to keep you guys fully informed. And that's my little spiel for those who are very new. And I hope you guys enjoyed it again. And I think we're ready to go straight into the presentation. We all set?
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Dylan. And good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for having me today. It's really a pleasure to be part of this program. And I'd like to commend the team for a terrific coordinating and organizing job. And lastly, I'm also excited meeting aspiring entrepreneurs and promising business leaders. I hope you are all doing well, given all these challenges and really trying time happening around us, sheltering in place, having the fall semester on an online modality. I know for some of us, it's going to be quite challenging. So I hope you are enjoying the ride and taking this as a different adventure positively. And I was just sharing earlier with Jay and Dylan that I just came from another pitch event, and this time it's for faculty. We also do our little pitches, even our own program. We also run it as if like it's a little startup, and that's basically for students like you. We would like to support in any way that we could. So it was really quite a busy day for me, so I hope I could pull this through. All right, so let me move forward. I'm not here to do an academic lecture. I think you had enough of that from your own respective classes, but I'm here to share my own story that might resonate to some of you, especially the international students, and talk a little bit about building a business around your idea. I remember that last week, your topic was building or creating an idea or coming up with an idea with social impact. So I think from there, or some of you actually has an already existing idea before you even join this program. So now, today, let's try to do a little workshop on how can you build a business around that idea. I would also talk about some of the concepts that you might have learned from your business and entrepreneurship classes, and hopefully I could humanize them a little bit so we can apply them, especially in the context of your own respective ideas. So as we go on and as I talk, I'm hoping that you're on a mode of imagining and have this visualization of how this particular topic or concept would relate to the idea that you have in mind. So as you have seen from my short bio, from all the, the flyers or marketing communication materials, and also easily from my own LinkedIn profile, I would not repeat all those, but I'll share a little bit of the inside story. And that's what I always would like my students when they introduce themselves, because easily now we can get a lot of information about people. There is all these social media platforms. Our personal lives are revealed on Facebook and Instagram. Professional life is through LinkedIn. So those inside stories that would surprise us. And I hope that, you'll be open in sharing your own story also as we move forward. So in my case, entrepreneurship has influenced my life in many ways. I was exposed to it early on through selling candies and even my math answers to our homework to classmates when I was in grade school. But the big part of my entrepreneurial journey, I have been a serial entrepreneur, was influenced by my own life experience, being married at age of 16, when no one else would think that I could actually be where I am today. A lot of people thought I was doomed to fail. How could a 16-year-old getting married, having kids, would navigate this very competitive space, getting a job, finishing studies, raising kids, etc., etc. But I never gave up on my dreams. I really have this aspiration of getting a college degree. I want to excel in a field that I would like to do. So I don't want to let go of those. So the reason why I'm saying this is because this entrepreneurial mindset is something that I lived. This is a lived experience. So with at 16 and realizing that I have new responsibilities without a college degree, I have to be extremely resourceful. I had to do a lot of bootstrapping. So I did many different shades of entrepreneurship in terms of, I started, as a gig player, meaning doing little hassles here and there along the way. However, I realized that because of all this, I developed an entrepreneurial mindset that helped me with my academic and professional career. And as we know, we define entrepreneurial mindset as the ability to quickly sense, take action, get organized under certain conditions. And that includes the ability to persevere, accept, and learn from failure. And most of all, being comfortable with certain level of discomfort. And I think all of this, if we look at the world we live in now, in this pandemic era, and even after, post-COVID, I am sure that this would call for this entrepreneurial mindset. So this mindset helped me develop a growth mindset in the process, and also a stronger perceived self-efficacy. Those little successes that we have in life, they built in us to develop mastery and eventually confidence that would help us promote and enhance our perception of our own self-efficacy. And that helped me in accomplishing many things I never thought I could. I won't use this entire time speaking about how it all happened, but imagine being so used to bootstrapping, and I'm always hungry for new ideas that I can use for various aspects of my professional, personal, and academic life. So it served me well in my career as a marketing practitioner. I had to be comfortable with change, taking risk, and taking failure in a positive light. And I think you guys must have read my last post before I quit my corporate life was vice president for marketing for a global bank. And that is something that really benefited from my experience being an entrepreneur early on in my life. Okay, that's about me. And I just want to, make you guys feel comfortable for who I am, what I do, and why am I here? Why am I teaching this? Or why am I sharing and, sharing some information about business model? And the truth is because aside from being an academic, I was once a serial entrepreneur and also a corporate intrapreneur. So those experiences, I hope I could infuse in my short talk today. All right. And by the way, if you have questions, I think Dylan mentioned this, you can use the Q&A box. I can probably, as I move forward, I could answer some of the questions. And if I don't, sometimes I don't notice those little red pop-ups, then I will make sure that I will cover them at the end of the presentation. Or if somebody can speak up, if it's really an urgent question that would necessitate an answer, I don't mind. I wouldn't mind if you would just speak up. Okay. All right. So now, before we proceed, I just want to do a little check-in, okay? Because this is a business and entrepreneurship program, and I'd like to know how comfortable are you with or how knowledgeable, how familiar are you in terms of small, medium enterprises here in the United States? So I'll do a little bit of polling here, okay? So please, everyone, I encourage you to participate and see how we envision this landscape here in the US. Can you guys see the poll? Okay, so I see people now entering their things there. Okay. And by the way, please relax, because as we move forward, I really would need your participation. You know, it's kind of odd that I'm the only one talking here. So if you could enter your answers later on the chat box, not the Q&A, when I ask some question, making it more interactive, please feel free to enter your thoughts, one-liner, you know, one word, you know. Okay. All right, so I see people answering. I see we have 82 participants. Wow, this is really, you know, very encouraging. Impressive turnout. Congratulations again to the organizer and to everyone who's here today. All right, so is that it? All right. So, okay, so let's now handle this one by one. So let's see. Are you sure we don't have any other? And last call here. 3, 2, 1. So I will end the poll now. All right, and see. Okay, so I see also some people entering their answers on the chat. Perfect, because not everything will be offered as an option on our little poll. So this is perfect. Thank you for doing that. Okay, so I would end the poll now, and I'll show you some answers here. Okay, all right. So I'll share the results with everyone. Now, can you see it? All right, and you can actually make use of those little icons, you know, when you click participants, and then you would be seeing, oh, you don't have those little buttons there that shows like reactions, thumbs up. Oh, you don't have it. Okay, that's all right. Okay, so, okay, we'll see. No emojis. Yes, Ria, no emojis. How could that be? Did you know that is one of the languages that we are using today? The language of business now includes emojis. Okay, so yeah, I'll just now proceed in tackling this. Since you saw the answers, you could see the poll results. What is the most common reason why people engage in entrepreneurship? According to this group, being my own boss. Congratulations. That was exactly the reason why majority of startups are venturing into entrepreneurship. And also, in addition to that, there was recent studies and scholarly studies in academic journals saying that the reason why people entered into entrepreneurship is because of search for meaning. It's a little really profound, but I'm so happy to hear that. People who are looking for self-actualization. Because when you think about being an entrepreneur, you really are accomplishing something. You're creating something. You're founding something. And there is a misnomer that, you know, sometimes when I go around and even among academics, and they would say that entrepreneurship is solely for-profit business. That was the definition of entrepreneurship, you know, many decades ago. Because entrepreneurship pertains to anyone who has an idea, who has a goal, who has an aspiration to start something, to create something, to start a movement, to start a nonprofit. All of those would require the same set of tools to make things happen. All right, so congratulations on that one. The second one is, what is the percentage of SMEs in the US? Okay, so let me just go back here and see. Okay, I'm just gonna show you some slides. And by the way, before I tackle that one, and I'm sorry, sometimes I tend to, you know, regress a little bit because I missed out on something, but it's so important, I don't want to miss this. This is the United States of America's map. Look at that. For every state, obviously we know there were some brands that we recognize. You can see here, California, obviously it's gonna be Apple. You see in Oregon, it's Nike. Washington, it's Amazon. All right, so in this Las Vegas or Nevada, it's Sands. So as I thought was really a cool, it's a cool way to represent United States of America in relation to the brands that we know. Okay. So here in the US, sometimes we always hear about Amazon, Microsoft, Google, etc. But over 90% of the business population represents small and medium-sized businesses. So when you think about the extent of that, the magnitude of that 90% of job creation, and some studies show that for every entrepreneur, the multiplier effect of that. So it is not just one big company like Amazon who would employ 300,000 people, but if we have, let's say, 95 million small businesses who are creating, let's say, 10 jobs, on the average 5 to 8 jobs, that's still large. So I have this faith that we can address and really introduce a more inclusive capitalism through entrepreneurship. Okay. So the next question I have is the percentage of small businesses that fail. 70%. I should qualify it, that failed in their first year. Okay. It's more than 50%. All right, of small enterprise SMEs fall in the very first year are more than 95% within the 5 years. So yes, you guys are right. It's really on the high end. So I'm not really saying and painting a really just rosy picture here. What is the primary reason? Okay, you said it's weak cash flow, lack of market demand, all right, lack of creativity, all right. What is a lack of market demand? You would be surprised because if you're in this program or you are in any business and marketing and entrepreneurship program, market research is so crucial. But why is it that there is still lack of market demand and certain products we're still able to get to market or to get launched only to find out that there is no market demand? So be careful about that. Market demand is not something that you would easily can get in a simple survey and running a poll on Facebook. If I launch this product, are you going to buy this? And oftentimes I see students coming to me and so excited, jumping up and down. Oh yeah, I have this survey, and then 80% of the sample population said that they're going to use the product. That is a misleading claim, because when you say they're going to use the product, it doesn't mean they're going to pay for the product. Sometimes people use the product because it's on promo, it's a free trial offer, or it's nice to have, but they are not willing to pay for it. So your question would play a critical role in really understanding the market perception and attitude towards a product in terms of the demand. Because sometimes they're likable products, but in terms of financial viability, it is not yet there. And the last one is the biggest challenge for startups. Funding is always the reason that people would say. This is almost always the answer of all respondents every time I do a poll. But the truth is, it's about people. Although there was another study saying that the biggest challenge is timing. Aside from people, obviously, that's a very important part, because funding would come if they see that you have people who can execute the idea, because the idea is dime a dozen. Sometimes people would come to me, I'm doing a little bit of consulting, and they would say, I'm afraid, Vivian, that my idea will be stolen, so I could not be in an accelerator program. They can just kick me out once they have they have all the things that I need. But the truth is, execution is the hardest thing. So there are ways to protect ourselves. There is probational patent, but the truth is, even NDA is not a foolproof guarantee that somebody will not steal your idea if they really want to. All right, but the execution makes a big difference. Okay. So funding, but it's labor quality. Funding, I'm not saying it's not a problem. It is a problem, but most of the time it's the people who make the idea get to market and execute it correctly. Bill Gross, the man behind Idea Lab, I think you might have heard about this guy. He's one of those billionaires and also a venture capitalist. He funded many of the unicorns that we know today. So Bill Gross, and he said that actually the biggest challenge for startups is just timing the market, because Google, as we know, is one of those success stories. But there was another brand prior to Google, GoTo.com, which was eventually sold. It was there, but the problem is it was launched. It was the idea at the time is beyond its time, and then of course broadband penetration was not really that strong yet. So there's no infrastructure to support an amazing idea. So Google actually came in the market at the time that the broadband penetration and then ownership of cell phone, there's smartphone already. Can you imagine if we have Google but we don't have the smartphone? If we have all these apps and we don't have smartphones? But first of all, you have to look at if there was no internet. So timing is critical. And there were a lot of stories that we could learn from where the failure has happened because of timing. Let me just check quickly here. And for labor, this is why family business tend to have an edge in small business. Jay, that is really an interesting question. Yeah. And that is also why most of this family-owned corporation, when they started, it was, family, and then it's run by the family as well. But if you notice, as they get bigger, meaning as they scale, they start hiring professional managers. And that's the reason, because it is for sustainability. When you think about just the family alone, not everyone would have the passion that the founder, let's say it has been founded by the grandfather or the father, and the siblings and the children, they might not have the same passion. And that's why a lot of programs today are preparing or are gearing towards succession planning for family-owned corporations who are starting to scale and of course trying to globalize. Okay, so I will close now this sharing our poll. Okay. I will revert to this Q&A in a short while. Okay. All right, so let me now begin. Again, like what I said, it's going to be a short one. I cannot cover everything, but I hope to give you a highlight of business model. So the framework that we are going to use today is business model canvas. I think many of you have heard that. And I like using this because it is very practical. It is very seamless, and you don't have to spend a lot of time, so that if you are into just a one semester program, or if you're really rushing to just come up with an initial document so that you have a blueprint, business model canvas is something that I would use. There are equivalent tools that you could use. I would discuss briefly as we move forward. Alexander Osterwalder was the guy behind business model canvas. I think some of you here might have heard about the guy. When you Google his name and business model canvas, you would see a lot of his work, a lot of template out there. So we will try to cover how we can do that in relation to the brands that we all know. Okay, if you're for the chat box, this is okay for you sharing your thoughts and also commenting. But if it's a question that you would like me to address later on, please use the Q&A box so I wouldn't miss it. Okay, so thank you. All right, so this is so true, this quote here, just like everybody else, I love citing these quotes as well. Some of them are really insightful, like this one. Countless innovative business models are emerging. I bet you, and I'd like to see your entries there. What are the different models that you have noticed in the marketplace today? And I always model it, so I give you an example. We know that you have the subscription boxes. Almost everything now is under subscription, right? So you can think of many different business models, and those are really innovative ideas or models on how to get the idea to market. Entirely new industries are forming as the old ones crumble. This is really sad because some of these big brands already has the has the brand equity, and they have the capacity, the capability to take advantage of internet or technology. However, sometimes they get so stuck with bureaucracy and just enjoying their own successes that they lose sight of emerging technology. Or Hoy, you raise your hand. It's just like are you just testing it? Okay, so if not, so we can name many different brands, and I'm sure the brands that I'm saying here, that the old ones that are crumbling, our 10 fingers will not be enough to name them. You could see Friendster, you could name Kodak, you could name Nokia, Motorola, all of this. What has happened to them? All right. So business model, which is our topic today, pretty much is a blueprint. And if I would ask you now, can you use the chat box? In one word or in one phrase, what comes to mind when you think of a business model? Then you can enter your answers on the chat box this time. Logistics, okay. All right, strategy, a plan. Yes, a plan, yes. Organization, yes. Details, all of those would be really part of your business modeling. Yeah. Budget, yes. That is so true. Okay, yes. And it's funny because we are always being taught on, thinking about the idea and all that. But a lot of times when we start talking about monetizing it or launching it, concretizing it, because some ideas are so vague that they could not put their fingers. What is it really that you want to do? And also, we have programs in culinary arts, we have programs in fashion design, broadcast media, visual media, and so on. And many students are already in the gig economy. They are independent contractors. We have programs in construction and automotive, and many of them are working for someone. And then when I have meetings with these students, and they would say, I have been doing this for a long time. I'm an expert landscaper. I'm an expert fashion design merchandising guy, but I really cannot really put my head around a specific model on how can I monetize my knowledge and skills, which is a very valid question, a very valid statement on how can we help people in monetizing their knowledge and skills. And I think many of you here possess that kind of knowledge and skills, experience, that you feel that now I'm ready I'm really ready to take the plunge. But give me a parachute here. Give me some set of tools so that although I'm gonna fall, but it's not gonna be as hard. If it's really something that I cannot control, I would fall, but at least I have something in my head. Okay. Leap administrative, can you make it larger? Okay, well, I am actually using a full screen presentation now, Gerardo. Right, list her name. It's a sharing view setting on my end. Can you guys see my PowerPoint now? And my screen talks about business model. Yes, okay. So now I have the definition of business model there. This is going to be a very interesting working definition for us. Okay, thank you guys for responding. So this is a working definition because there are 3 operative words that I'd like you to remember when you're thinking of a business model. There are critical components, 3 things you shouldn't miss: creation, delivery, and extracting value. These 3 things, because a conceptual framework of your idea should talk about how you create that value. Because every time you sell something, and when you say selling, it doesn't have to be a tangible product or service that someone has to pay for. You sell ideas too, meaning if you would like people to volunteer for the causes that you are passionate about. For example, you care about homelessness, you care about human trafficking. It's a great example of a movement that you would like to start. So you are creating, you have that idea where you have to create the value proposition for customers to believe in, and for customers to participate in, for customers to buy in, or at least to advocate for your cause. So creation. Delivery. Delivery is key because the idea remains to be just an idea if there is no infrastructure to make it happen. And lastly, extracting value, because everything we do, we're hoping that at the end, we could get something in return. That's why extracting value. And can you think of some examples of how we as entrepreneurs extract value? What are those values that we expect in return? Sadly, everyone is quiet and the box is empty. Extracting value because at the end of everything we do, we want people to buy our products, to subscribe to our ideas, to subscribe to our website. You know, all those call to action. Some of you here maybe have taken principles of marketing class. So call to action is that line that you're asking your readers, your viewers, your listeners to do for you. That's why when you advertise, you always have to have a call to action. What do you want them to do? And so similarly, when you have a business or you have a startup, you created a product of value, you deliver it to the customers, and at the end, you would like to get the value in return. You extract a value in return in a form of purchase, in a form of revenue, in a form of likes. Perfect. Yes. Thank you so much, Hima. Even liking your post on Facebook is a value. It's a value to you, you know, because it gives you a certain level of happiness, a certain level of, oh yeah, I got 1,000 likes today. I've got my post has been shared 50 times today. I am actually now being endorsed by LinkedIn as an influencer. Those are value that we can extract after we deliver a value proposition. All right. So let's move on because this is just top level, but I hope to concretize this. So if you think about your idea, don't lose sight of 4 factors or 4 broad factors that you could look into if you do not want to focus yet on the 9 boxes within the business model. So think about your offering, and the offering can be a tangible product or a service. Tangible product, for example, like your laptop, a book, scissors, pencil pen, all of those, something that is concrete. But a lot of times, many of the offerings we see in the marketplace are intangible. So intangible products such as consulting services. Some of you here might be an IT consultant. Some of you could be an accountant. Some of you will be medical doctors, lawyers, right? And here in the United States, we are a service-driven economy. We no longer manufacture a lot of goods because we outsource or we import many of these goods. We know that, right? In terms of global trade, we import most of the products that would entail manufacturing because it is cheaper when we do that because of comparative advantage. So United States major exports to the world today are actually movies. Entertainment is one of the major exports of the US that contribute to our GDP. You see those reality TV, America's Got Talent, American Idol. Those are major exports of the US, and it's in the form of services. Education. When you see a lot of students here, foreign students, that's our export, education. And it's because there is a strong value proposition about the American US educational system. I'm making sense here? So on a smaller scale, I'm talking about those little services that you could think of that you are going to pursue as part of your offering. So if you're actually into hair cutting, masseuse, you know, all those kind of things are part of offering as well. So when you look at the business model canvas, that is where the customer value proposition would be. Now, the second part is the customer, because your idea doesn't mean anything if there is no customer, if there are no users, right? So when we talk about customer, we're talking about customer segments, because no brand will be a product or a brand for everyone. I always hear this argument that, oh no, I can launch an idea that is for everybody. When you say everybody, we have 315 million people in the United States. If we remove the children and the very old, are you saying that all 280 million or 260 million in the US are your customers or potential customers? Obviously not. So we have to understand there are segments that we can serve and there are segments that we cannot, or maybe not yet. But we have, or we should have, our primary target market. And when you think about that, you can think of, should I enter a mass market, meaning a much broader market, or should I go into niche market? Should I go into a much segmented market or a multi-sided market? I'll talk about that later on. But obviously that's part of the customer value model. So it includes also channels, and channels are the platforms where customers can access the products that we sell. And the last one is the customer relationships, because every time that we tap a certain segment of the market, let's say you identify that your product is only for a particular niche market, you have to consider that what kind of relationship I'm going to have, right? So the third one, infrastructure. This means that the ecosystem that would make your offering accessible to customers and making your business operate, making everything happen. So the tracking company, the banks who would provide you with credit, who would provide you with a platform payment system, all of those are part of the infrastructure. And the last one is the financial viability, wherein the lowest part of your business model is your revenue and cost. So enough for this, because we will cover this on a very detailed basis as we move forward. Now, this is my question. And please participate on the chat box, okay? So the types of businesses, a lot of times when I ask that question, what type of business do you envision yourself or your idea would be more suitable for? So some of you here has an idea already of a particular business. So what do you think? Can you type it there? Or you don't know yet? Okay. Niche platform. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, this is interesting because this is relatively new. This is structure right here, because in the past, when we talk about types of businesses, startups, entrepreneurs, businesses would say, oh, I want to do a B2B, B2C, C2C, B2CB, you know, things like that. Those were the common answers that I get. But I'm bringing this up, and this is relatively a new framework wherein we hear the terminology tech platform and marketplace. All right. Okay, I see a lot of people commenting. All right, Vanessa, spa salon. You can now think, having a spa or salon, what kind of business is that? Would it be a merchant? Would it be an originator, etc.? So I would now explain this, although this should be a separate business, a separate seminar or workshop by itself, but I just want to touch a little bit on this because this is super important. In the past, you would see that most businesses would fall into this category, originator and a merchant. An originator, for example, Procter and Gamble, you know, they would, or a small restaurant, a restaurant who would be specializing in sushi, or let's say, for example, ramen. So it's a standalone product or a service or a firm that would serve customers, okay? Now, there's also another model, which is a merchant. So for example, you have your idea and you think that, I think I don't want to engage into the production or manufacturing of this. I could easily just, you know, outsource this or buy the finished product out of China or maybe from Alibaba and all that. So you can become a merchant. Typically, years ago, those were the models that are so prevalent. And we call them pipes. Now, we have platforms. And without technology, obviously, we cannot make use of platforms because platform is is powered by technology. Now, what do we mean by this? Okay, so you could see here that pipes is just like a regular water pipe. I guess that's the best explanation or metaphor for this. The producer, it's very linear from the producer to your company, and then you find distributor. You could be this same person here too, right? But sometimes you could be the producer and also the retailer. But it's always this way, from producer to resellers or distributors, all the way to consumers. So the value is produced upstream and then consumed downstream. Downstream will be the consumers here. But this is the model of the past. With internet, we are now in the platform model. As you know, we have, what do we have in terms of platform? Can you give an example? Obviously, I can type there, Amazon. That's one great example of a platform. Okay, anyone else? eBay, yes, eBay. Any other thoughts? A platform, Alibaba, Craigslist, okay. So when you think about Wattpad, Squarespace, yes. Okay, now see the difference here. And I'd like you to think about it in terms of your service or your product idea. An example of a pipe is a TV station, a TV channel. They produce a documentary, they produce a film, and then they push it on us, and then they would come up with advertising, with some trailers and all that, so that we will watch the movie. So that is one-way channel. You know, they produce and then we consume. But when you think about a platform, you will have to think of YouTube. Because in the case of YouTube, the users, all right, the ones who are viewing the videos created by the creators and the producers, all right, we can interact with each other. We like it or not, we can push it. They can put, it's not that they're pushing it to us, because we can skip it. If we come across a video we don't like, we can skip it. All right. So when you think about the major difference between the two model or the two framework is that with pipes, the push, it's very linear, and they're pushing the products to us, the very traditional model of selling in the past. With the platform, it allows users or consumers and creators or producers interact. So we create value for each other. Think about Wikipedia. In the past, there was Encyclopedia Britannica. So Encyclopedia Britannica, because of internet, they were able to come up with an online encyclopedia. But the problem with that, the creator is only Britannica. They're authors, they're proofreaders. The company is the one who produced the content. And then the users are the people like you and I, probably, who would look online, checking out Britannica encyclopedia. But in the case of Wikipedia, they allowed creators, people like maybe you and I, who would go in there and trying to edit. Let's say you're very, very passionate about let's say soccer, and you know that there's some historical data that is not being contained in the platform. But what you do is that you can go in there and also edit that. So we become creators as well. All right, am I making sense here? So the problem with platform, because we see a lot of platform model now, like what you said there, Uber. Oh, Uber is a good example, okay? Pinterest, I'm sure many of us also familiar with Pinterest. The problem with that is that it's a multi-sided consumer model, because you have the user or the consumer, and at the same time, you have the creator, which is not exactly within your control. Unlike, for example, if you are a pipe model, you control your employees, you control the kind of content that would be there. But once you empower the app developers, you empower these other creators to be on your platform, it is a risky proposition. So that's why we see now that, Facebook, Twitter is getting into problems because of an open platform. So it's a multi-sided framework or consumer model when you think about customer proposition or selection of target customer. So it's a chicken and egg, because sometimes platform, if they don't have enough users, the creators won't be there because they want to be there when they see a lot of users. But similarly, users also wouldn't be there without enough content. So it's kind of challenging. Platform models drive more traffic. Yes, Leo, it is true. And the point is, you have to ask yourself, how can I drive more traffic? Because we have seen several platforms that are struggling to drive traffic. To drive traffic, you must have content that's interesting enough, that would go viral. So when you think about platform, you have to think of the network effect. Would it be strong enough for people to really get into my platform, to really subscribe? And when people are getting in there and finding nothing, then oftentimes, they would not come back. And the worst is that the first few times, and they get this very disappointing experience, the user experience is so critical. And then the same thing would happen with creators. And later on, when we do the business model, we can talk about TikTok. I think that's a very timely topic, because just today, TikTok came out in the news that it's been for the US operation, they chose not to deal with Microsoft, but it's going to be Oracle. Okay, so that's going to be an interesting thing. Okay, so am I getting to be, this is too much information for everyone? Okay, thank you, Teresa. Okay, so now I would move forward, because again, there's many advantages why companies today are using the platform model. There are some stories, though, that I would share. For example, the network effect didn't work. That is one major setback for that. Developers are not engaged. So sometimes, there are companies that they have to pay the developers just to still continuously provide content. And then the value is not shared by participants. So when you think that only the platform is benefiting from it, but the users and the developers or producers are not, so meaning the value is not shared. Critical mass is not achieved. So this is the key, the critical mass for advertisers to come in. And there's how would you call that, the fear of missing out. Once you hit this critical mass, and then people would start flocking into the site, well, you'll be jumping up and down if we reach that point. And lastly, obviously, is the ecosystem that was not established. And those are the several reasons why a platform model would not succeed. So I would now move forward about planning, because some of you mentioned earlier that when we think about business model, it's a form of planning. We have to think through, how am I going to monetize it? How am I going to acquire the customers? How am I going to price the product? So all of those entails planning, but it takes many forms. When you think of planning, we always think about what is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word planning. What is usually the outcome of that? Or what is the activity that is involved or what's the document that normally is the product of this planning session? Oftentimes we hear the word business plan. This is majority of, yes, Nathaniel, you're right. Business plan. Everybody's talking about business plan. I've been in the corporate sector, prepared so many business plans in my career. Sometimes it would take us months. The executive team has to sit down in several boring meetings to draft this business plan. Sadly, suddenly there's an Asian economic crisis. I was working in Singapore when it happened. 98 economic crisis, Asian econ crisis. What happened to my business plan that I toiled for months to work on? Spent thousands of dollars on research and collaborating with many different cross-functional teams across the world. And then one economic incident like that makes my entire business plan useless. Exactly today, these companies who spent so many hours, man hours, and other resources drafting the business plan, and then suddenly there's COVID-19 and we are all locked in place. So what's going to happen? We need to pivot. And this is the reason why business plan is just one of the many. I'm not saying it's not important, because if you're going to secure a loan from a bank, you know, I was a banker for most part of my life. Obviously, we ask for business plan. When you go to small business administration, you go to a government agency for funding, you go to National Science Foundation for funding. All of those would require a business plan. So this is not a wasted initiative, okay? But there are other forms of planning, and I bet many of you have done this first one. Back up a napkin or sketches on a page. Anyone who's done that? You know, you're sitting in a coffee shop or you're on a train, and then you have this really relentless idea popping up in your brain, and then you start doodling something also on your iPad or something. So those is a form of planning. So we cannot dismiss those as you're not planning. You are actually. So business brief is a simple version of a business plan. Normally those are bullet points explained in 1 or 2 sentences, but it's still also based on some kind of research. And then of course your pitch deck, because when you imagine every single piece of that deck, every single piece of information that you would enter into your pitch deck would require thinking about the business. So that's a form of planning. And the last one we always hear also is the term feasibility study. So for today, we're going to focus on the business model canvas. All right. So Stanford likes to use this one. It's almost kind of similar to with the BMC, but this is a more simplified version. I just want to talk about this briefly, but it is not widely used, as unlike the BMC or the business model canvas. So transaction, customers, access, partners. So just like what we covered at the very first one, your offering, your customer, your infrastructure, and your financial viability. Okay, so let's move on and try to start working. Name a few problems experienced by customers, because it all begins with this. Every single pitch, every single planning, every single idea you have, I am sure, has originated from some of these problems. Can you name a few? And you can enter it on the chat box. Sorry, I don't have a word cloud here. Problems experienced by customers. For example, for me, I would say lack of information, yes. For customer, yes. Lack of money is definitely some of the concerns of some customers. Healthy options, okay. Battery is dead. Okay. All right. Lack of time and money. Time, yes. Customer satisfaction, low customer. Yes, the customer satisfaction obviously it's a result. Low customer satisfaction is a result of something that is missing from the value proposition. Okay, quality is bad. Okay, that's a problem. Yes, everything you wrote there. Lack of personnel. Yeah. I couldn't agree more that lack of personnel is really challenging. Although we always say that we have this unemployment rate, but the truth is there's a lot of companies who are still looking for people, because you cannot just hire anyone. It has to be the right fit. We're talking about the perfect product market fit. Same with people who's going to work with us, right? Tech support won't help. All right. Okay, so typically the 4 projects or 4 major problems that came out in some studies are lack of skill in doing a task or doing something, lack of time, lack of money, and lack of access. So with that, we're talking now of pain points. Are you familiar with the term pain points? Guys? So pain points is that we have to understand what is the problem, because if you want to offer something in a market, remember, customer value proposition is important. What makes your idea unique? What what would make me buy your product compared to the existing ones in the marketplace? So that is what we meant by CVP, customer value proposition, and it begins with this disorienting dilemma that serve as a catalyst for you to jump jump into a specific initiative. I'll give you an example. Under Armour. We're all familiar with the brand Under Armour, correct? So think about Under Armour. At the time that they entered the market, there was already Nike, there was Adidas, but the founder still entered the marketplace. And what make him do that? Because this guy happens to be an avid runner, and he's really very athletic, and he leads a very active life. And his problem is about he perspire a lot, he sweat out a lot, so he wants to keep himself dry. So he wasn't satisfied. And I think you mentioned that customer satisfaction. So he wasn't satisfied with the products that he had in place. Okay, thank you, Dylan. So with that initial problem in mind, he did not just give up and saying, well, I guess I have to deal with what is available in the market. But instead, what he did is he looked for potential supplier or manufacturer of a certain type of material that would absorb sweat or absorb this, you being wet. So what happened is, the rest is history. It's now Under Armour, but it has its own customer value proposition, meaning he did not compete with Adidas or Nike in the same space, but there is one thing that is unique about the product. Okay, so with that, he has to identify who are the customer segments that he has to tap. You cannot just say, okay, everybody is going to make use of this product. There's always this Nike fans and Adidas fanatics and all that. So he has to identify who are these people. And you can tell that there are people who are also suffering from the same problem. There is a medical terminology for that, when some people will always have some problem with keeping themselves dry. So with that, you have to think of what channels that these products are going to be accessible. Because in the past, we always rely on brick and mortar, and goodbye to that. But now we also talk about e-commerce, but that's not even enough. E-commerce is not enough because now we also have mobile channels. But when you think about the evolution of channels, I would give an example. In the case of banking, we start with brick and mortar. You have the physical location of a bank. And then there is telephone banking. And then there is ATM banking. And then there is online banking. And then now we have mobile banking. So when you think about that, you're now we have 5 different channels. So think about your own products. Where do you think would it go, or would it fit in? Which channels are you going to use that? Customer relationships. What kind of relationships do you want to have? Well, Under Armour was saying that, well, for me, it has to be those that would meet the pricing that we would like to sell our products, because the product is not for everyone. The key activities are the support structure or support ecosystem to make all these things happen. So instead of me talking one by one on these things, I will give you this example, Uber. I guess all of us is familiar with this. Maybe some of us have used Uber in various ways. All right, so what is the value proposition of Uber? And if it's not mentioned on this screen, you can enter your answer on the chat box, right? Because Uber, when it was started out of its frustration of these founders. They were starting to look for a ride, just like what happened to Airbnb, when I will be another example that I would share a little later. It comes out of his frustration of finding a ride, especially if you are in a major metropolitan area where access to transportation is almost like it's almost like a lottery. Finding a taxi, and it's almost like it takes a lot of work. So the value proposition here, the very strong one, is connecting riders with drivers. So in that case, this is a great example of multi-sided customer model. And what we meant by multi-sided is that you have the rider and the driver. As a platform, without enough driver, you cannot have enough users or riders. See the connection again of the chicken and egg. So in that case, you have the customer segments. When you are giving away, or you define all this value proposition here, the customer segments would be two-pronged. The riders, people who need a ride, but I can still narrow it down because people are a broad market segment. But who among these people, who needs a ride or who need a ride, I would focus on. And the drivers are people who want to make extra money driving. So you have two target market there. And obviously, for this to happen, you have these resources to be in place. You must have the tech platform, that's the enabler. And then we have the driver network and a strong brand, because this platform would operate on trust. We cannot just ride on anybody else's car without really knowing that there is a system in place to check on or monitor and vet on these drivers who are riding or driving for us. So when you think about these key resources, the tech platform, the talented employees who would make all these things happen to fit into this model, there are jobs or activities that come with that. You have to imagine that in terms of your particular idea. What are the jobs that need to be accomplished? What are the activities? Because it's sometimes when we are envisioning ideas, it's easier said than done. So think about that. Is it doable? What are those activities? And what are the key partners? So when you think about Uber, payment processors, the bank, the map tech companies, investors, etc. So basically, when you look at all this connection, when you think about your business model, all of these boxes here must connect. You must connect the dots. And at the bottom of it is where you extract value. And when we say the value, the revenue and the cost. Because every time you add a value proposition, every time Uber would like to add another layer of service there, it entails more cost. But at the same time, when you think of a new service, it adds into your revenue stream. And when you think of a revenue stream, obviously this is your pricing model. And pricing can also entail so many different strategies. So I hope that, I'm trying to really compress everything for the element or for the sake of time. So I'm sorry if I'm jumping too fast here. Like when you think about TikTok, what do you think is the value proposition of TikTok that make it so appealing to younger, I guess Gen X, Gen Y now? What is it, the value proposition of that? Easy, fun, all right? Okay, yeah, all right, that is very true. And Airbnb, yes. So when you think about that, they did not just enter the market just because they have an idea, but because they know that there is something unique about it that would make them really hit the market that they would like to serve. So for example, I'll say, for example here, let's say TikTok. So it has been downloaded 2 billion times as of April 2020, right? So it started in 2016 in China and then 2017 here in the US. But you see, it is very enticing because of this organic discovery. There's low barrier to entry. Anybody can just be part of that. And then it's addicting, it's entertaining. The creativity that the producers of content, and it's low barrier to entry. It is highly personalized content. That is true. So when you are comparing TikTok to Instagram, you could see that there are differences that would really make it appealing to the target customer that they want to appeal to. And same with Airbnb here. And I had the pleasure to sit down with the founder in an intimate discussion in one of the events in the past. So that was quite a while ago. And that's what they were saying. This guy, Mr. Chesky, he said that he started it just like Uber out of a frustration that, I guess his name is Brian Chesky. So he was saying that he was trying to look for a place when he attended a conference. And unfortunately, most of the hotels, if you are here in San Francisco, obviously it's always the case, it's going to be very expensive. And a lot of times it's hard to find an opening or get a spot. So he was in a bar, I think a coffee shop, and he was seated next to someone. And guess what happened? He was venting his frustration. He couldn't find a place. And this guy in front of him said, "Oh, would you want to crash in my pad tonight?" And he's like, "What?" Out of nowhere, this guy he just met that moment is offering his place. And this is a complete stranger. How many of us will have the luxury or will have the confidence that, you would say yes and still wake up alive the next day? So the rest is history, because what he did is he joined, and when he entertained the idea, he explained on how this whole thing become a product because of the value proposition that he saw based on his own experience. But it isn't easy. When they were starting, he has to act like the chauffeur to pick up the clients or the guest from the airport, and he has to act like the photographer to take the pictures of this home so that they will get listed into the website. So there's so many of these stories that it's not really an easy way to get up there, but because of the very strong value proposition, using exactly the same models or the same analysis that we made use here, identifying your key partners. Obviously, in the case of Airbnb, it's going to be the payment processors as well. There's also the homeowners in terms of the customer relationships. There's the homeowners and also the users or the guests. So it's a multi-sided type of business model. And in terms of the revenue streams, I would have to, I guess, end it here. A business model would not be complete without the revenue streams. And I think you guys would know that revenues you can focus on a few items, do not over diversify, because one of the reasons why MySpace actually died when Facebook came, not immediately, but one of the reasons is it's over diversified itself. And I think some of you might have known or have heard MySpace, which is a social networking platform before Facebook. So these are different revenue models you could think of. And I think many of us is familiar with freemium. So I would suggest this is a different talk by itself, but I cannot just leave it behind because every business model would have to have a complementing revenue model. And I would love you to think about it as early as now. How are you going to monetize? This is where you will extract value. Okay. I think I exceeded my time, so I'm really sorry about that. And I'm closing by reminding you of the bonus 6 thinking hats. If you're inspired by always being wearing your green hat, which is about creativity, pause for a moment, because there are times that we need to wear some different hats. We have to think of the process. We have to think about the feelings. We have to wear a black hat to be cautious. And at the end of the day, all of this are crucial for us to complete our business model. It is not all about just being creative. We need to actually wear this many different hats to complete the model. All right, so that's my presentation today. I'm sorry if I exceeded time. I guess I talked too much, but I'm open to questions. Okay, now let me answer these ones there. Anonymous attendee, referring to the new business model code, does NGO count as a new emerging business model? No, it's a form of a business, and it's a form of an entity, because entities can be a single proprietorship, a corporation, or a partnership, etc. So NGOs is not a business model. It is a structure of an organization who prefer to operate under the label non-governmental organization. Okay. How do we stay away from harmful value extraction? Okay. This is why I was actually promoting this socially responsible capitalism. because I am aware that oftentimes startups, entrepreneurship is being associated with capitalism, especially when you think about mindless consumption. It's always associated with consumerism. And that's why I said, when you think about social enterprises, that is one way. If we really live up to the name, social enterprise, they are there to solve wicked problems. But it seems a platform model is linked to the company. The product pretty much is the company. Is that correct? Yes. Like Uber. Uber is the company who operates on a platform for drivers and riders. So the product itself is that platform that oftentimes we call as Uber platform. You know, so from that product, you can actually create some other use to that. So you could see now that Uber was able to come up with Uber, was it the Uber delivery, Uber, with deliver food. So there are some new revenue streams that they could create out of the Uber Eats. Thank you, Uber food. Yeah, Uber Eats. So you imagine that they were able to generate a new revenue stream utilizing the same product, the same platform, but it's a new revenue stream, a new set of customers, multi-sided customers, the diners and also the restaurants. Okay, Eduardo, once a business model is chosen, what is the most effective way to represent? Okay, so your business model, if you have decided that you will use the BMC, that's only the blueprint, okay? But I think your question is that if you want to use platform or pipe. So it's up to you. If you chose to use pipe model, that's perfectly fine, but your business model has to support that in terms of the key activities, in terms of the key resources, in terms of the revenue. So it follows the type of platform that you opted at the beginning. That's why this seminar or this workshop is the second part, because by now I hope that you would think what kind of business platform is going to be useful for you before you design your business model. I hope I'm making sense here. Eduardo, Okay. Example of strategy that would scale a business that targets a niche market. When you actually think about Amazon, it started as a niche market. It was only targeting or just selling books. It was very niche. These people who really couldn't find the rare books, that they're making them available online. But then eventually, as they capture the critical mass, they have databases and they saw the behavior of consumers and they have the platform in place, they have the infrastructure, then you can leverage on that to scale. Okay, over diversify under one category. Yes, my example earlier is MySpace. They over diversified. They tried to, because they were bought by another company. I think it's News Corporation, who bought them for 580 million. So what happened was that the company, as now it's no longer a small startup, they dictate. They want to have more revenue. They want to have more profits, and so on and so forth. So they over diversify. They try to be a platform where they carry these advertisements. They carry all these other byproduct, and it's too much. They're spreading themselves too much to the point that they were not able to sustain it. Suggest marketing newly launched brand. Okay, from a no brand app to popularly well known today. I don't actually get it. So, well, you see that for us to capture this, the network effect to get viral is a function of marketing. We really have to spend a lot of time to reach out or acquire customers, but we know customer acquisition has its own cost. So if you mean here, Hui, if you mean that you would like to have a partnership with bigger brands, if you could offer value for them, then why not? If they would agree to that, I definitely would suggest yes. You can have a co-branding, or sometimes you can just do just create synergy. And then if we offer many CBP or activities, would that, yeah, I think I mentioned that, or I answered that question earlier. Okay, touching on social enterprise, how do we turn charitable ideas meant for nonprofits into for-profit proposition? Good question, because when you think about social enterprises, those are for-profit. Nonprofit organizations are different from social enterprise. Social enterprises are like Warby Parker, Bombas, Toms. Those are social enterprises. They still make money. The difference is that these corporations at the very start decided that they would operate with a mission. That's why it's called mission-driven organization. So they have to register as a social enterprise. There's not a lot of tax break and all that. But one, it is a marketing differentiation. It is a positioning statement. You can position yourself differently from other sellers of prescription glasses, and it would appeal to customers who are equally passionate about social issues. Unfortunately, there is such thing as greenwashing. Some brands are exploiting the idea of doing good because they want people to love their brands. Remember, we can vote with our dollars. So we want to support those companies who are doing good, or those who are doing something for social good. So meaning a social enterprise is there not only for economic impact, but also for social impact. Zoom presentation, recording and PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, so I hope that I was able to answer most or all of the questions here. And I think I really love the idea of social enterprise, and that's why for me it's a separate course, you know, that we offer, because there's so much we can do. Startups today are not here only, I hope that most of you here are not only for economic impact, and there's nothing wrong about economic impact, but we don't want to lose sight of the triple bottom line. And when we say triple bottom line, I'm speaking of profit, people, and planet, or the 3 Ps. So we as entrepreneurs, we as startups are change makers, and we really can really influence change and make a lot of transformative products and services to make or address a certain issue that we would like to address. Okay, so I am sorry, maybe I exceeded my time, but I just hope that I was able to impart something just so that you have an overview of a business model.
All right, thank you so much, Vivian, for this great lecture. And hopefully everyone in the lecture now have a better idea how to build a business model around the idea. And if you haven't done so, please register to our 3rd workshop, which will be happening on this Friday, which means in 3 days, same time, 3 p.m. PST. And I just put the link in the chat box, and please register. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you all there. And the recording of this video will be online in 2 days. You can find the recording under the educational resources on our website. All right. If we don't have any questions, that'll be all for today. And thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe and healthy.
Yep.
Bye.